Hello to everyone and welcome. We're really excited to have you all joining today's webcast. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're located across Canada. Welcome to today's webcast, Mixed Reality at Ontario Power Generation. My name's Eric Muller, and I'm the Director of Stakeholder Relations at Quest Canada. And we are a nonprofit working to accelerate smart energy communities across the country. We're really happy to have you all joining us today, and I'm just looking at the participants even here and very pleased to see truly kind of a cross-country audience of utility and other stakeholders. And just a heads up that this webcast is being recorded, and we will be making it publicly available on the Quest Canada website after today's event. We're excited to have some leading energy innovators with us today, and I'll quickly introduce them and we'll get started. So joining us today, we have Dale Adams, Renewable Generation Maintenance Innovation Lead with Ontario Power Generation. We also have Ed Lay, Nuclear Maintenance Innovation Lead at OPG. And we have Bilal Khursheed, Industry Advisor, Power and Utilities with Microsoft Canada. So now I'm going to pass it over to Bilal to provide some industry perspective, and then Bilal will facilitate a discussion and bring Dale and Ed into today's discussion. So thank you very much, and over to you, Bilal.
Awesome, great. Thank you, Eric. And thank you all for joining today. It's great to see so many familiar names and faces and old friends and colleagues, and of course, new friends as well. As Eric mentioned, my name is Bilal Khursheed. I am the industry executive for Power and Utilities at Microsoft. I'm based out of Toronto. We have a super exciting session planned out for you all today, and you're going to hear from some industry experts who are truly leading the pack in many ways when it comes to driving innovation within our sector. And sessions like this, they're extremely important, where utilities can come together in an open forum, share with each other the things that are working well, where we're seeing value, and of course, taking that back into our own organizations to see how can we accelerate growth, how can we accelerate innovation within our own teams and business units by learning from others. And it's important because it's to put it simply, it's not going to be easy. Our industry is facing unprecedented levels of disruption. And I think I can confidently say, and I'm sure many of the folks in the room here will agree with me, is that the days of stability for our industry are far behind us. We need to prepare and respond constantly to the changing needs of the business. Our systems, our processes, our tools, our people will all need to constantly evolve and shift to meet the growing demands of our industry. Everything from the way energy is generated, distributed, bought, and sold, it's all evolving. You have demands from our customers, regulatory pressures, there's technology evolution, there are tremendous pressures around cost management, around reliability, there are external threats around cybersecurity, there's a need for grid optimization, revenue protection, decarbonization. I mean, the list goes on. And all of this is kind of culminating together and driving that immediacy to look to technology and digital enablement as a solution to further many of these challenges. But I'll also call them opportunities. Opportunities because, I mean, these are the triggers that are moving our organizations forward into becoming the utility of the future that we're all kind of striving for. And I've been working with utilities all across Canada and also within the US, and here at Microsoft, we're connected globally with our international colleagues, working with European utilities, Australian utilities, and so many more. And I haven't come across a single utility that doesn't have utility of the future or become the utility of the future somewhere in their strategic goals. And the reality is that there are many journeys or pathways that utilities will need to take in order to get them from where they are today to where they want to be in the future. And for the most part, from what I'm seeing, is that utilities have traditionally operated within silos. You have the distribution arm of the business who's been far disconnected from the transmission and generation side of the business. You have the customer organization who's struggled with disparate data sources, which cause a whole load of downstream and upstream impacts to various business units and, of course, to customers themselves. You have planning teams who are so far removed from shared services and supply chain teams that it makes it extremely difficult to align investment planning with a competitive procurement process. So as mentioned previously, there are several pathways that utilities will need to take in order to move them from that siloed environment to becoming a fully integrated, flexible utility of the future. One of these pathways is the pathway of customer, right? Ensuring that customer is ingrained in all decision making. The customer point of view is baked into asset planning. And of course, that really hyper-focused view on planning to serve the energy prosumer of the future and transforming customer experience. Another one of these pathways to becoming that utility of the future is that heavy focus on the operational side of the business. Everything from improving reliability, grid resilience, building a flexible dynamic grid that supports the integration of DERs, and everything from asset management, planning, plant operations, forestry operations, and really industrializing parts of the business that haven't seen much in the sense of change in maybe 30, 40, or even 50 years. And part of this is also looking at the workforce within operations who are at the core of our industry, our frontline workers, those who strap on their boots, throw on their hard hats, and put themselves in far less forgiving conditions than those of us who have been working from home. And to complicate things further, this frontline workforce is at risk, not just from a hazard perspective, but given the nature of the work they perform. But approximately 25% of this workforce will be eligible for retirement over the next 5 years. So there's a risk of losing an immense amount of technical wealth if our organizations do not adequately establish strategies on knowledge retention, knowledge management, and developing methods to further collaboration between our teams. And this brings us to the topic of today's session, leveraging mixed reality within our industry, and specifically learning from the experts at Ontario Power Generation who have successfully deployed the Microsoft HoloLens and Remote Assist to their front line to combat this industry challenge, and as well as driving significant operational and equipment efficiencies for their teams. Really merging their frontline workforce with digital, merging their workforce with data and analytics, to bring about a new frontline worker experience that's driving business outcomes at OPG that weren't possible before. This team has been hard at work at bringing the virtual together with the physical and really bringing data to life into a new mixed reality that's been optimized for their workforce. The team's been, hard at work at transforming that frontline worker experience, expanding coverage, improving productivity, extending asset lifespan, retaining decades of skilled knowledge for the next generation of utility workers to come, and most importantly, creating a safer workplace as well. This team has really redefined what it is to be a frontline worker in a utility. At this point, I'm going to stop speaking. That's enough out of me. I'd like to introduce Ed Lay, who's the Maintenance Programs Manager at OPG. Ed serves as the Nuclear Maintenance and Innovation Lead and was one of the key individuals spearheading the Microsoft HoloLens implementation at OPG, along with several other innovation initiatives. We also have Dale Adams, who is the Manager of Projects at OPG and the Engineering Strategy and Technical Advancements Organization. Dale is also one of the key leaders at OPG who drove the HoloLens implementation and is responsible for providing assistance to 66 hydro station staff regarding innovation efforts to improve equipment reliability. So with that, we'll start with a 2-minute video that OPG has produced that highlights their use of the HoloLens and Remote Assist, and after that, you'll hear both from Ed and Dale directly. Ed, I'll cue it to you to play the video.
Okay, and let me know if you don't hear the song, but here we go.
In December 2018, we began meeting with Microsoft to discuss how the HoloLens can help OPG nuclear maintenance and renewable generation teams become more efficient and reduce human performance mistakes. After 2 meetings, it was clear that there was an incredible opportunity in 2 applications, nuclear and renewable generation. In nuclear, many routine maintenance procedures require supervisor sign-offs and concurrence verification by peer, an important process in which supervisors and coworkers are required to stand close to one another. Waiting for the right personnel to show up on site often causes delays. The Microsoft HoloLens offers a technically proficient way of connecting a worker and verifier over vast distances, and on an as-needed basis. Since the pandemic began, the HoloLens has allowed workers to maintain safe distances from one another while performing routine maintenance. In addition, the HoloLens reduces maintenance errors by providing a database of knowledge to the worker, all from within the user interface of the HoloLens, a worker can now access notes, manuals, and step-by-step instructions. In these storyboards, we see exactly how the HoloLens will work in the field. First, the user puts the HoloLens on and signs in. Next, the HoloLens will advise on tools and equipment and guide the user to the job site by providing navigational assistance. Upon arrival, the HoloLens scans a unique ID and the remote verifier is called. From virtually anywhere, the remote verifier can perform the correct component verification and maintenance can begin. During the job, the user has access to any notes left by previous workers in the form of text, audio, and photos. All are viewable from within the interface of the HoloLens. The worker can pin step-by-step instructions beside the machinery and call on supervisors to provide approval to pass on important hold points. In this example, a job that formerly required 2 people on site now only requires 1. In the next version of the HoloLens, we improve on a solid foundation while taking advantage of new technological opportunities. In the HoloLens 2.0, we implement even more time-saving features with the continuous goal of making maintenance safer and more efficient.
Okay, so let me just dive in a little bit deeper. Hopefully you like the video. So again, at least OPG nuclear maintenance. I'll in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to dive in a little bit more on the applications that that we deployed in the nuclear portion of OPG, and there we'll talk about his renewable generation portion. So for those who are not familiar with OPG nuclear, our maintenance team is 1,500 strong. So that's 1,500 maintainers between our 2 sites, and that is our Pickering plant and our Darlington plant with 10 running reactors. It is one of the biggest maintenance organization that I know of, and I've been to 2 other industries myself. So with great power, here comes the great opportunities. And so there's lots of good opportunities for the nuclear folks to apply the mixed reality, and particularly the HoloLens. And I'll just briefly go over some of them. So the first 2 items I wanted to talk about, and the video touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to expand on that so you get a better sense of what that is. So the first item is what we call a CCV, correct components verification. And that is, as I said, the videos already talk about it. And this one will combine with what we call a single person task. So let me expand on that. As part of our process, a correct components verification is a procedure. This is a procedure about 12 pages long. Everything that we do in the nuclear world needs a procedure. This is no different. Not on top of this this procedure, we also have a 4-hour classroom training to train all our maintainers to be able to follow the correct components verification. It's very important that we do not work on the wrong components. The consequences are severe if we disconnected the wrong device, and that could trip the unit, as serious as tripping a unit. So a lot of a job, there's a high percentage of work that we do in terms of about 30% of work that we do. It is a single person job. However, what makes it a 2-person task is this CCV. So before we start the job, 2 people go out to the field, and one person is what we call a performer. The second person is the verifier. So the performer puts the finger onto that components to ensure that he or she is about to work on the correct component. The second person, the verifier, following the procedure is to make sure that the first worker is in fact point the finger at the correct components before work begins. That takes two people, and as I mentioned, that the job itself, by and large, is only a one-person job. But because of this CCV requirement, we have to send two people out. And oftentimes, as you know, the second person is now, I mean, he or she is not just going to stand there, right? They're going to have some conversation. Hey, what happened to the game the night before? And sometimes that takes the focus off of the performer. With the HoloLens, well, now we can have the verifier at a remote location. So the performer put on the HoloLens and can go ahead and point a finger at the correct components. The second person could be somewhere else, just sitting in an office, and through the laptop, then they can actually talk to each other and making sure that the first performer or the performer is pointing at the correct components. This became appearance when COVID hits us in the last 2 years. So as you know, we have a 6-foot rule, and there are times that the opening up electrical cabinet door, and there is not enough room for a second person to stand 6 feet apart and be able to see that. So with the HoloLens, and this actually came in, perfectly for us, and we are able to adhere to the COVID policy, and at the same time able to perform the CCV. Okay, so that's the first, and then on top of that, as I mentioned, the single person task. So we can now not tying up two people for the one job. We can actually 30% of what we do on a day-to-day basis can actually be split up by two people. We can actually do two jobs at the same time. The next item I wanted to mention is the hands-free when it comes to following a procedure. The procedure, whether it is a digitized procedure or whether it is a PDF procedure, or even some of the just-in-time video and video procedures that we have. So what it means is that if we were to use a piece of paper, well, on the one hand, you need to hold on to that procedure and flipping through the pages and following through the step by step. And then on the other hand, you holding on the tools. Well, with HoloLens, we can heads up project the procedure. So the worker can actually tilt the head slightly and be able to follow the procedure step by step and command the procedure to advance verbally. And that takes a lot of, so both hands can now be on the job and, working on the tools. And I mentioned about the just-in-time video. So when you're opening up a pump, a motor, and now if you're not quite sure, you can actually run that video, and the same thing, right? You can heads up project, and we actually develop a series of video procedures that instead of a paper step by step, you can actually watch the procedure in a video format and advance it step by step verbal command. So that's another application that we deployed. The other one I want to talk about is what we call a whole point and tech support. What it means by the whole point is oftentimes the procedure would come to an inspection point. We need an inspector or the supervisor to come and visually inspect it before we can proceed. And that takes time, and when you call the supervisor, that means the job is now coming to a halt. It's going to delay. With HoloLens, we can use the remote assist feature and call the supervisor or call an engineer, and immediately they can see through the lens of the worker, and they can actually draw a circle, focusing the worker. Hey, how about this part of the motor or the pump? Let's focus on that, and that eliminates a lot of delays, and physically the supervisor doesn't need to go out to the field, and oftentimes at a plant our size could take 15 to 20 minutes to get there sometimes, right? And the other item is what we call a outage critical path, and also a progress update. So during critical path, what and then let me talk about this term. When we advance work and this particular pump removal could be critical path, meaning that no other parallel work can be performed until this pump is being removed. So a couple of things. One is that we want to make sure that the progress of the pump is known. We have a 15 minutes, 30-minute rule that we need to know, hey, what step are you at? And oftentimes that is very cumbersome and that's delaying. We need to send people into the field and ask, hey, what step are you at, and report back to our outage control center. Or sometimes when the worker ran into some unexpected situation, and when that happens, the process is stop and back out. And again, that takes time, right? So when the worker is working inside our reactor building and putting on the plastic suit, fully dressed, and then encounter something unexpected, per our procedures, they are supposed to stop and back out. And you can imagine that could take hours when they come out and before they return. And oftentimes they don't even return on the same shift. They may return the next shift. So this critical path job is now being delayed. And just so you know, each day when we take a unit down for outage, each day that if we prolong this outage by one single day, it's $1 million lost revenue to us. So it's very important that we don't delay the outage, particularly critical path. So again, with the HoloLens, this can easily be resolved. Put on the lens, we can see exactly where they are at with this pump removal, and if they needed technical support, if they ran into unexpected conditions, rather than stop, back out, call some help, and there may be something simple that we can resolve over the HoloLens. With that, so the whole thing, what I just talked about are basically three major items. One is to ensure the workers are not working on the wrong pieces of equipment or components. Second is their safety. As you can imagine, if we send the worker inside the reactor building, they are taking up dose. And they back out, they come back in again. Well, now they're taking up dose again. So we are trying to reduce the dose uptakes, and that's safety and of course efficiency. Those are the three things that we leveraging the HoloLens device. With that, I'm going to stop. And any questions before I turn it over to Dale?
And everyone,
Maybe
you can
if
pose your questions in the chat, or Bilal, if you have other instructions.
yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you do have questions that come up, please use the chat window, and we'll get to it in a bit.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Dale.
And so I'll go through a bit of a spiel of what we're doing in the renewable generation side of the business. It's not unlike what Ed is doing in the nuclear side of the business, but slightly different. So we were introduced to the HoloLens back in 2018 and really in earnest in 2019. And initially, we're trying to determine how or if this technology might assist our workforce. So we explored the possibilities of providing more technology into the hands of our station workers. We started to learn about the device capabilities and then worked on some use case scenarios within our working environment to determine where there were potential benefits, what those benefits might be to the wider business. Doing that, we had three main streams that evolved. One was the remote assist feature that Ed has already spoken about, but it allows us to provide better contact between our 66 stations and various office work environments or station-to-station work environments across the province. We're very scattered, as you can imagine, across the province the size of Ontario. Some of them are very remote, but we have the opportunity to use different communication tools, and this one's proved out to be pretty valuable for us. We also work with Microsoft to develop a couple of apps. One is the work protection code app on the hydro side of the business. So there's a desktop app and a HoloLens app, and it allows people to look at work protection. So we're developing that one. And then the one that Ed has already spoken about on the nuclear side of the business, that step-by-step procedure that they're working on in his business. Our user group consists of maintenance personnel, engineering personnel, projects, field staff, office staff, and training staff. So it's a pretty wide group. We've got devices in their hands, and we allow them the opportunity to meet regularly, where we discuss the possibilities of utilizing the device and a little wider within the business, and what those pitfalls might be associated with the devices, how the technology can interface with some of the other technologies that we're presently using in OPG as well. So this is one item that's part of a wider build out of exploring different technology tools associated with maintenance and engineering in our business. We have online monitoring on our generating stations for better use and data collection and modeling of that existing data. We've established a monitoring and diagnostics center with our internal analysts for equipment reliability and oversight. We've got mobile devices, not only with the HoloLens, but tablets and phones in the hands of trade staff as well to help gather and push and pull that data for equipment reliability. And we're linking this data collection seamlessly to a wide array of data within the business, and using that data for equipment health condition and reinvestment decision inputs is one of the things we're pretty excited about. We developed an online control room log, and that's one for each of our 4 control centers, and that's integrated with the generating station characteristics and profiles for the hydro side of the business, and then digitizing forms and procedures that better allows us to capture data. And that's really one of the areas where we see the HoloLens being very successful. As Ed mentioned, it's hands-free. You can take procedures to the workplace. You could take videos or drawings to the workplace. You can mark them up. You can utilize the device hands-free, and allows people to stay focused on their business while also having other tools in their toolkit to do their work. So at present, we are working to effectively integrate this information and the collection of information. And we're doing that through what we've got called a model station. So a small station where we have these different technologies in play, and we exercise them and trial them. So with that, I'll leave it there, and I'll turn it back to Bilal.
Excellent. That was fantastic. Thank you to both of you for sharing such your insights and experience. I'm sure it resonates deeply with the audience we have here today. We do have a question or two in the chat box here, and I definitely have a few questions that I'd like to ask as well. You know, with something like mixed reality, it can often be perceived as somewhat as a technological fad, or it's one of these digital enablers that falls into that category of what I'll call sexy tech, right? And often there's skepticism associated with it as to whether it can actually drive value for an organization. And I was just wondering whether there was any skepticism from leadership or the working level as to the value that could be attained from mixed reality, and what level of resistance did you encounter from the front line when deploying the solution?
You're on mute, Dale.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, I mean, I can take that one, Bilal. So I can't say that we had any skepticism from leadership. We were really well supported by leadership. As I mentioned before, this was one of kind of many different technology devices / technology that we wanted to put into the hands of our workers. And so it was really well supported, both you know, from the leadership point of view, the discussion point of view, and the funding perspective. And once we got going, we saw it as an opportunity, right, to synergize with our folks on the nuclear side of the business, because quite often we are working in what I would call somewhat silos, and it was nice to see a technology come along that we could both use, similar in some cases, but also certainly in different aspects in both of our business. So how we did it, we got some support, but we looked for some champions across our regions. We looked for some folks that were interested in technology, and we tried to engage them, put the tools in their hands, and then let that bubble up and percolate across the business. And that's really how we think it was been successful to date. Word gets around pretty quick, right? When there is something, as you said, that's kind of sexy or new out there, and what might it do for our business? So that's really how we approached it, and I can say it's been pretty well received across the OPG business.
I like that approach, being very organic in terms of how it spreads and leveraging the champions. And of course, with the benefits associated with it, I think the buy-in would be relatively quick. Ed, question to you, and it's a similar question to Gary from the chat box here. What was some of the hurdles that the project team encountered during the implementation?
Okay, I'll take this one. So I just wanted to add to the previous question to what Dale said. So from the nuclear side, within OPG, using the technology, using the latest devices are nothing new. Our maintenance organization has been using tablets to execute work. Read through the procedures rather than pieces of paper or drawings for number of years, 4 years, we've been using tablets. So when we introduce the HoloLens, it's an extension of it. It's a tool within the tool set, within the drawers, and so they can decide today whether I take a tablet out to execute this work, or would it be better to take the HoloLens. So it wasn't a difficult sell for us. The biggest hurdle that we encounter with the HoloLens is, and this is for the team. It's not an if. I'm thinking that if you haven't already look into the HoloLens and applying them, you should. The biggest hurdle that we have is the network connection. So each company is different. Being that OPG nuclear, the IT security part of it is extremely important, as you can imagine. So having the HoloLens to be able to connect it to our IT or to our network took a bit of time, and something that we hadn't anticipated at the beginning. And on top of that, we've actually went through 2 versions of the HoloLens, right? So phase 1 and phase V1 and version 2. The first version of the HoloLens really wasn't designed for enterprise usage. It really meant for individual. It's sort of, I'm going to say maybe a home use. So we ran into some difficulties between when we tried to network the first version of the HoloLens. The V2 is built with the enterprise architecture in mind, so much easier. But still, our biggest hurdle is really the IT firewall. Back to you.
Yeah, it seems that way with many technology implementations. It's once you get security and cybersecurity, given the nature of our industry, there's definitely some delicate decisions that need to be made along the way. Another question from the chat box here. A question from Robert. How does the HoloLens solution integrate with your GIS applications and asset management system? I'll leave it to any one of you to take that question.
Yeah, so I'll chime in on that. We don't have it fully integrated to either of those systems, but those are items that are what I will call on the list as we bring that information together and we see how it's best utilized through something like the HoloLens. So it's not fully integrated, although we do have the capability to extract anything from our OneDrive to the HoloLens in the field. So really, it acts like another mobile device that a person might have out in a station, as an example, but we just don't have it tied into those 2 systems yet.
And I think, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, and I think there's a question further down that on the nuclear side, I think I can tie this question to that. So I'll reserve that until the next question.
Yeah, it's with some of these large scale implementations, it's almost that incremental approach you need to take, and that MVP approach, right? Drive value today and then incrementally build upon that. And it's going to be exciting to see where this ends up for OPG. And on that note, we're seeing it with nuclear operations today. It's expanded into renewables. Dale, where do you see this going next for OPG? Are there opportunities to expand into different parts of the business?
Yeah, so we've got it in the hands of what I would say most of the lines of the business within RG right now. Now it's not widespread, but again, we've got those champions in each lines of those business, right? Where we're really seeing a lot of bang because of the scatteredness, I guess I'll call it, of the stations we have across the provinces, the remote assist feature, and everything that can bring as far as a very live, dynamic meeting and information available to some of these folks who might have questions in the field while they're troubleshooting and reaching out to an engineer in another location. Or, what we have found, we didn't really notice it at first, but what we have found is where we've got peer-to-peer. So we might have, a certain mechanical expert in one location in the province, and another location has a problem. And so they're very comfortable, right, as craftspeople reaching out to trades individuals in other parts of the province to help them troubleshoot an individual problem they might have at their particular station. So I see a lot of that in the communication realm. Our training folks are pretty interested, as you can imagine. You can do simulation, you can do training. And so I think that's one of the more obvious ones associated with the HoloLens, where you can create that environment for training, and it doesn't have to be in the same room. It can certainly be remote, but be just as rewarding from what we've seen so far. And then for us, it's really building out this work protection code app. If we can get that work protection code app in a position where it helps us reduce human mistakes, human behavior issues, and we can lock it down through the HoloLens, we think there's an opportunity there to enhance safety behaviors, right? So there's really where we see it going in the near future.
Awesome. We'll take another question from the audience here. Question from Kevin. Curious about how much of this is out-of-the-box applications, such as remote assist and guides, and how much is custom built. Also, are you using Dynamics Field service along with it? I'll flip it to maybe Ed or Dale.
Do you want to?
Yeah, so the remote assist and all those out of the box. The only thing we did is enabling the HoloLens to interface with our smart procedures, computer-based procedures, whatever you want to call it, and into either the PDF version of it, but we are already moving on to digitize every single step. And so that is something that it was customized. And also, I believe, and Dale, when we look at, and you see the video, when we look at the equipment tag, right? So that is something that the HoloLens using the vision to capture, to ensure that you are in fact working at the right piece of equipment by looking at the tag and immediately tie the tag to the work order. So those are customized steps.
Yeah, if I could just maybe build on that a little bit as well, as Ed mentioned. So the feature that we worked with Microsoft to develop is called Optical character recognition, and so it allows us to scan an individual unique tag that might be on a piece of equipment or a system, and it also has the capability to do barcodes or QR codes as well, right? So that's a really important feature to make sure, as Ed mentioned, people don't get on the wrong device, or they ensure that as they walk through permit and they're doing switching, that they go sequentially from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc. So one of the custom features.
Excellent. Another question for me this time. The late last year, we heard the news of OPG partnering with GE Hitachi Energy around Canada's first grid-ready SMR. Was wondering, where does mixed reality fit into the SMR scene, and where do you see it fitting into the construction and commissioning of the upcoming SMR?
Yeah, so that is something that we are very excited. SMR, we are targeting 2028 when we start producing, generating electricity. So in the next few years, we will be starting breaking grounds and installing our first SMR. So to that, we are currently writing the engineering spec from the maintenance standpoint. As I mentioned, we currently have 1,500 maintainers, right, looking after 10 reactors. those days are gone, right? So when SMR comes to OPG, there will be a lot less people. There's really, back then the technology wasn't there, but today it is there. So we will be leveraging the HoloLens, and not only HoloLens, but any other latest, greatest technology. So for example, HoloLens, you can look at plans, and you can look at construction plans and construction instructions step by step. You can look at drawings. You can do trainings, and on top of that, when we get to so that's during the building of our first SMR. But when we get to operating the SMRs, currently we operation the do what we call ops rounds. So what it means is that they go out once or twice per shift, and they carry a piece of paper with a checklist, and they go and look at the gauges, look at all that. But when we get to the SMRs, and those ops round requirements no longer there, not only that those sensors will be sending it back to some kind of a control room, but even if you are going out into the field, my vision would be that you can use HoloLens and scan like Dale said, the QR code, barcode, the equipment tag, and we can, actually see the trends of that particular temperature gauge for the last 2 weeks, and it could actually pop up in your heads-up display. So while you are walking in the field doing your visuals, all that information is readily available. That's the plan. So that's the future of us operating our next generation of reactors. End of comment.
I love where your vision is going there, Ed, in terms of being able to walk up to a specific component, a pump, and being able to see not just its current operating characteristics, but looking at its historical operating characteristics, and then determining whether that could, trigger some sort of anomaly and some equipment failure down the line. Love where that's headed. And on that note, the deep-rooted vision of innovation that's so present here. Was curious maybe if you wanted to share some of the other innovation initiatives that you're working on at OPG. Ed, I'll flip this one to you.
Okay. We actually OPG is it's a leader in many in our industry, in the nuclear industry, and I'll share 2 examples, and we have a long list of items, but I'll share 2 examples that I'm currently working with Microsoft. The first one is AI. We have developed, with the help of Microsoft, we have developed our first AI planning tool. So what it means is that when we go out, so say you drop off your car to Canadian Tire and to do whatever it is, right? So typically there's a plan to deal with this. So again, I'll go with taking out the pump and replacing it. There's a long drawn out plan. Step by step, we first need to do this, disconnect electrically. We then need to build a scaffold, and then we got to set up some sort of a lifting, beams to lift it out, and we got to do some welding and all that. There's a long there's a very in-depth process for our planner to go through this, and it was a manual process, and the planner do about 2.5 work orders a week. That's how much of a manual intervention. So Microsoft was able to help me design and build an AI tool. We looking at the past 10 years of all the plan work and find the one that is closely matched to this current job within a fraction of a second. And all that manual intervention is gone. So we reduced that planning exercise by about 90%, and the planners are using the last 10% to provide the quality review, and then before setting that plan to ready. So that's one, and very proud of it. And again, this is the first of its kind, and many other southern nuclear plants are knocking on our doors trying to buy this from us. The second item I want to talk about is Boston Dynamic Spot, and I'm sure A lot of you have seen the little dog-like robots and running around. So we are currently again working on the Spot project and with Microsoft. So I'll share one example that we're currently working on. So Spot will, and I mentioned earlier, right? Operator rounds. So operator currently go out and does his thing on a clipboard piece of paper. Well, those days are gone. Send the robot out. When Spot encounters something unexpected, okay, maybe a puddle of water, well, Spot is not going to know what that is. All it knows is it's not normal. That wasn't what the robotic dogs saw yesterday. It is there. There's a puddle of water. It's going to stop and then call a Teams meeting, and then bring in engineer, brings in maintainers, operators, and just like this meeting, we can see through the eyes of a Spot and determine what is that. Do I need to take action immediately, or do I need to file a work request? And then if I need to file a work request, and Spot can help me put through this AI tool that I just talked about, generate a package automatically. I'll stop there. Back to you.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ed. We'll take one more question from the crowd here. I see Gary's got a bunch of questions for us here. Who develops the creation and management of 3D models? Was that capability developed in-house or third parties provided?
So 3D modeling in our business is done in-house with a specialized group.
So a couple of things for us. 3D modeling, we've used it to scan a room. When I say a room, I'm talking about inside our reactor buildings. So that's one type of 3D modeling. We scan the room so that we can now, before we send people in, we can actually physically look at the 3D model, the layout of this room to reduce dose. That's one. The second one is our nuclear plant is 40 years old, right? So a lot of components, simply as a panel knobs, those are no longer available to buy. So we use a 3D printer and scan it and then manufacture our own. So those are in-house. It's been around for a few years.
Yeah, that 3D scanning that you're referring to in terms of scanning the interior of the reactor rooms. Incredible value for the utility space around the terrestrial point cloud data that's built around identifying constructability issues and retrofitting in brownfield situations. I see that being used quite heavily and continuing to grow across not just on the generation and plant side, but also on the substation side as well. Ed or Dale, last question over to you. What advice would you give to those on the call who have maybe considered mixed reality within their utility, however, might be a little uncertain whether they should move forward or not?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always an interesting question, right? So, I would encourage people to do as you're doing here today is to learn about mixed reality, right? Learn about the device and some of the capabilities. And I think we've been pretty successful about finding some interested employees in our business and putting it in their hands, a small select group, and see what that working group comes up with, right? Let them explore, let them brainstorm, see where those potential opportunities are. The ideas, they can be endless, right? People get a new device and some technology in their hands. They think that they can do a lot of different things with it. And I think the challenge is sometimes is getting it narrowed to the business effectiveness. It's great to have the technology, but how is it going to help you or a worker or a group or a station in day-to-day activities? So they're not going to be used by everyone all the time. We think it's another tool in the kit for employees to utilize as they see appropriate. That's really how we're looking at it.
Great advice and great way to wrap up there, Dale, in terms of ensuring that you remain a business outcome focused, right? And a lot of times the focus is strictly on the tech, and that's where you see some technology implementations fail, is when you lose sight of the actual outcome that you're trying to achieve. So really appreciate it, Dale, Ed. I'd like to thank both of you so very much for sharing your experiences here with everyone on the call. And I'd like to commend the both of you and as well as OPG for truly embodying the values of innovation, that growth mindset, challenging the norms at OPG and fostering that culture of innovation. So thank you so much. I'd like to wrap up with a short message on that note on culture and mindset and the fundamental mindset shift that's required for an industry to remain competitive, to remain relevant, and become that utility of the future. The example today and the leaders we have with us from OPG demonstrate that growth mindset and really leading an internal revolution of sorts, because you're really changing fundamental parts of the business. So building those alliances internally and externally is ever more important, and having that kind of hunt as a pack mentality, because it's a lot harder to do alone, of course, and it's best to have co-revolutionaries there with you to help drive this forward. So with that, there's much more of a premium on alignment, on collaboration, seeding innovation, and letting innovation grow in different parts of the business as well. How do we build in a test and learn mentality, which becomes a very important part of the culture? Both Ed and Dale needed to accept a certain level of risk when it came to exploring whether mixed reality is going to drive value at OPG or not. And the thing is, the fear of risk is something that we all run into in our industry quite regularly, especially for an industry that's been pretty risk adverse for decades. And I've been a victim of this myself on many occasions, given I'm coming from industry. Risk at times is used as an excuse not to take action, and that becomes the biggest risk of all. There are countless studies out there that have proven that in an efficient market, the companies that win are those that do a better job of taking risk, and not those who do a better job at avoiding risk. So there's a difference between really playing to win and playing not to lose, and we as leaders in the industry need to live by that value. And moving from that kind of command and control post to a coach and communicate. Dale, I love what you said in terms of get the tech in the hands of the users, let them kind of foster out those business outcomes and get them to drive the productivity. Those conversations and that collaboration, that openness with your team is very important to have. And the utility of the future, which you may be tired of hearing all the time, what does that really mean? It's being future ready is you're building a resilient organization that's adaptable, that can adjust quickly, where you need these new agile processes. You need accessibility to data. You've got talent on tap and on staff, and this culture and mindset that says we tolerate failure as shots on goal to get us to the next spot, and we don't retreat when there's a setback. All of that is vital resilience for our organizations, regardless of what's going to be thrown at us. So my ask to all of you on this topic is make a conscious effort to explore how mixed reality would benefit your utility. Rope in your subject matter experts, rope in your frontline, the leaders in innovation within your organization, and let's start a conversation around how mixed reality can actually transform your utility's frontline workforce. So once again, Dale, Ed, really appreciate your time today, and thank you for everyone for joining. I'll pass it back to Eric for his closing message.
Thanks, Bilal. And just a reminder to everyone, today's webcast has been recorded, so it will be publicly available on the Quest Canada website after today's event. I'd like to thank our speakers for the excellent discussion and insights shared today, and a big thank you to Microsoft, today's sponsor. And most importantly, thanks to all of you for joining and participating in today's event. If you'd like to learn more about how to get involved in Quest Canada and our Smart Energy Community mission, please reach out to me, Eric Muller, or visit our website at questcanada.org. And this concludes today's webcast event. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.